Hey there, everyone. It's an Adam Carolla SubReddit podcast. Somebody pointed out in the comment to my last video, it's not a subforum on Reddit, it's a subreddit, dumbass. Yeah, okay, you're right. It's a subreddit. So this is the Adam Carolla subreddit. This is a place where people come to complain and do a whole lot of things that generally don't involve listening to the show. But we're going to talk about the show thread because it's here, and because Sakic posted it, and because Colorado did not secure their series last night, and St. Louis won and forced another game. So, let's go. Now, let's talk about Mark Zimmerman and Dr. Zimmerman's office and Dr. Marissa Randazzo. So, school shooting, awful elementary school, approaching dozens of casualties at this point. Awful. It's tough to make this a funny podcast. I understand that. I don't think anyone here is complaining that we didn't have comedians on in light of what's going on, given that the podcast is kind of being pertinent and current. I mean, we do have a news girl. We're supposed to be current, even if they're recording this a day or two behind. So, rather than try to be funny, because it's not really a funny mood here, I would like to add what I'm good at adding, which is solutions to problems. So, the age-old debate, I mean, I'm not on Facebook, but I've heard the Facebook debate is, the same loop of nonsense where it's like, we're all outraged, nothing gets done, and then we all forget, and nothing gets done, and then it happens again. Well, the reason why that's an endless loop is because guns are always going to be available. The ability for people to want to destroy and kill and use their own resources that they can gather to do that on an individual level is always going to be a threat to humanity. And it becomes a different type of threat to humanity as the power with which one person can wield their evilness starts to grow. Now, in this situation where it's automatic weapons, where you tend to be able to go into a place where generally people are defenseless against an automatic weapon in most public settings most of the time. Even if you're carrying a weapon on you, you're still somewhat defenseless to being shot by an automatic weapon in certain instances. So it's something scary, right? Now, in this school shooting incident, where you have someone going into a building and being very dangerous, my solution to this is, I don't think we're going to be able to take guns from everyone, or the availability to take guns from everyone. We need something more like this, right here, which is, this is the Boston Dynamics type dog bot thing, all right? If every school or every public place where it's a target like this, a soft target essentially for crazy people that want to shoot things up, they think of doing it at the school. The school is somewhat of a soft target. The school doesn't generally have a military defending its doors. It's a school. Well, what if every school had one of those, or a few of those walking bots here? But these are going to be militarized in a fashion. And it's kind of scary, but it would kind of help provide some security and potentially solve the problem and other detainment problems. So here's my idea. My idea is to program that thing, that dog, or whatever else humanoid robots and stuff that people are designing, to have a detainment setting, which is basically, we have like an active shooter situation, is what they're going to say it is, and be like, all right, we have an active shooter, well, let's open the bot up, the dog bot is released, right, or its setting is changed to be like, we have an active shooter, it's going to use its cameras to identify anybody holding a weapon, and it's going to detain them. It's not going to shoot them or kill them. It's going to jump up on them and pin their arms and legs down and like pin them down like someone's trying to pin you down. That is a algorithm you can write to try to harness someone. Now, this would be able to detain people if it identifies who it's trying to detain. But it's not going to be susceptible to being shot as much. It probably would actually deflect a lot of fire. It'd be probably difficult to shoot that thing down if it's coming at you and to make it stop. And you can certainly build protective encasement around it that would make it as protected as possible from that. And so what this would do is, this is not a taser. This is not something that is handed to the police. This is an autonomous robot that has to get instructions from someone, and it has certain limited capabilities on what it can do. And detaining someone is huge here, because if you had this bot roaming around the halls when the shooter comes in, as soon as somebody notifies, be like, we have an active shooter, so it's like, all right, it or multiple iterations of this thing, or just deployed by police if the school doesn't have one. You bring the police, get in, the police don't have to worry about going in and being shot themselves. They send this thing in, it finds the shooter and detains. How does it do that? Like physically, like jumps up, pins down, uses hydraulics to net in some case, and then like, hold down, right? Like pinning down, like what they do on airplanes when people are unruly and they try to get into the cockpit, people pin them down. Well, you can program that thing to extend out and try to pin someone down without killing them, without even seriously harming them, just in a manner that stops them and hopefully disarms them as well. Because if you're pinned down and you still have a weapon, you're not nearly as dangerous as if you're not pinned down and have a weapon. So that is my solution to this problem. Whatever these doctors talked about, and public health and gun stuff, yes, of course we need to stop people from wanting to do this, but there are issues going on in people's brains that we can't constantly monitor, and even though we try to classify people, not allow them to have firearms and do certain things to certain people that may not have complete, what we would call rational control over their body, we need to have a defense against them when they do go crazy, even if they don't mean it, even if they're going to, for whatever reason. We have to defend. So defending in a non-lethal manner is what I would propose doing, and more investment in things like this that are autonomous solutions, that they are scary because, keep in mind, you could program this thing to detain anyone if you hacked into this thing, right? Like hacking into this thing is different than hacking into your computer. This is a physical security issue if this thing gets hacked into. So, and with the limitations that you place on what this thing does, right? Because robots can kill us all if we program them to do so. And we don't necessarily want to do that or have that capability, a common capability for everything, because it's so dangerous, right? I mean, how do you think the robot overlords end up taking over? It starts by the robot overlords taking over, right? So I know we should fear that, but we also, if it works and it's, the number of incidents go down and the number of loss of life goes down by robots stopping the problem, then even when somebody hacks into the robot and kills a bunch of people, maybe the net benefit is still good for humanity. I don't know. It's a philosophical question. We'll have to answer at a different time. But anyway, I couldn't really go through too many of these comments because this was just too... one thing I'll read. Shoot, landing, fail. Yeah, here we go. I actually really enjoyed the first part. Both guests spoke with authority and were quite interesting. Okay, here's a long-time listener. You only get 7 upvotes, so there weren't that many other people that probably listened to the show wanted to agree with you, but there you go. So if you want a reasonable comment from someone who's been here a long time, maybe these people were listenable. I don't think they're going to be as listenable as I was, but that's just because I'm a snob about my own podcast. So we'll see. All right, guys, that's today. Maybe tomorrow I'll be a comedian or some, it's too difficult to harp on all the sadness in the world. There's so much that exists, and even though this hits close to home, let's try to solve the problem and keep moving forward. All right.